Dear Junie Megan, I still remember the first time I saw you. It's one of my most cherished memories. I was at Grandma's house, on the old church bench in the kitchen, hanging out with my cousin closest in age. Grandma walked in, carrying you and your siblings in a big white plastic bucket, carefully corralled from the yard. You were a half-feral farm cat, more wild than the rest, a stray of sorts, and Grandma warned us to be careful of you, because you would bite. And from that moment, I knew I wanted to hold you. I knew you were like me. You were vicious, unruly, untamed. You were someone who people treated with caution, who was misjudged, who they were wary of. You were different from the other kittens, and so people were afraid of you, just because you bit people, which was a perfectly reasonable thing to do, because I would bite too, if I were being chased around the yard by a big, scary woman, who must have seemed like a veritable giant to you when you were but a kitten. You were plopped into my child hands. Your fur was rough, and your nose had a black stripe down one side. It was how we could tell you apart from your siblings, that and, your personality. The other 3 kittens would try and run, between fight or flight. They'd all choose flight, and so you were the easiest to catch. I named you Megan because you reminded me of me, and it sounded kind of like Morgan. I wanted to keep you from then and there, but for some reason my unreasonable mother wasn't sold on adopting you right then and there. It took a few weeks, and you continued to grow, outside in the warm September sun. And by the time my mother decided upon adopting one of the wild farm cats, you were the only one that anyone could catch. And so even though you were the vicious cat that would bite, you were the one we ended up with. And I was pleased as a child on their birthday, like someone who had unwrapped their gifts and found all their birthday wishes had come true. I was thrilled to see you. I was elated, overjoyed to have you in my home. You? Not so much. Just like me. Cats don't do very well with change, and you were not at all pleased to have been driven 2 hours in a car and a blue cat carrier to your new home. Mother insisted on calling you Junie, because she thought Megan sounded too much like Morgan, and it was confusing. I think she missed the point. The whole reason Megan was the perfect name for you was because you were as obstinate, headstrong, determined, and averse to change as me. So you ended up being called Junie Megan, as neither of us would give, and after calling you both Junie and Megan over the days, the weeks, the months, the years, you became known as Junie Megan. I will never forget the fear I had when one day, when you were but a year or so old, you started having trouble breathing. You were breathing heavily. Something was wrong. I knew something was wrong. You were sitting on the foot of my parents' bed, getting your matted fur atop their quilt, and you were having trouble breathing. You were dying. I knew something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. None of the vets were open, so we took you to the emergency vet at 10 or 11 o'clock at night, and I was terrified to leave you there. You were in your cat carrier, the plastic blue one that you would have always puke or pee or vomit in, because you did not like car rides, which is perfectly reasonable, as being dragged somewhere that you don't know, because, as a cat, you weren't exactly the most fluent creature in English, and so we couldn't very well explain to you in words what was going on and expect you to understand. Must have been distressing. We had to leave you at the vet overnight, and I was terrified that would be the last time I would ever see you. You, my darling ruling empress, who was perfect in every way, regardless of what anybody else said. You could do no wrong in my eyes. We left you at the emergency vet, where they were going to run some tests, and we would return in the morning. I wanted so badly for you to be okay. There was nothing I could do. I could only wait and hope and pray and wish with all my soul that you would be okay. You survived. We found out you had a heart condition, an enlarged heart, and for some reason because of that, you ended up with your lungs filling up with fluid, and you were put on a pill for every day for the rest of your life. And the scary thing was, we were told that it could stop working at any time. You could have a month or a decade. You could live for a full lifetime, but there was no way of knowing, and your lungs could fill with fluid, and you could be robbed of your breath again at any day. I treasured you. I treasured you before, of course, but every moment with you was a second chance. Every moment with you was worth 1,000,000,000,000 Neil points, because every moment could have been your last. It's a good thing that you were the easiest cat to catch, and that you were the one adopted into our home, because if you'd been left to your own devices, free to roam the countryside, you'd have died before you were 2 years old, from your enlarged heart that beat to its own discretion, instead of living to be a great old battle-axe of a cat, an old lady of 14 and a half. You'd have been 15 and a half if you'd lived till today. If it were up to me, I'd trade the world to give you good health, eternal youth, and immortality. If we were both given a millennium in human years, I don't think it would have been enough time to have spent with you. I suppose that everyone feels that way about people, pets, friends, and family that are no longer among the living. I miss you. It's a little bit unsettling how it was kidney cancer that took you in the end, when I still remember, years ago, in summertime, Mom and Dad had to travel out of state, and so you and me, and your sister Daphne, and our human sister too, were all staying at Grandma's. You apparently didn't have fond memories of your ancestral home, but more likely it was because we both hated travel and change. You found the water distasteful, or off-putting, or just didn't feel well enough to drink, and so you weren't drinking, and you ended up with a bladder infection and a kidney infection, and you did survive with medical treatment, but afterwards had to take a second medication for the rest of your life. You can lead a cat to water, but you can't make it drink. That was one of my favorite things about you, though. You were obstinate, headstrong, determined, half-feral, insisted on doing things your own way. You didn't cater to the whims of humanity. You were unwavering and following your own instincts. In retrospect, I wish I were more like you. I feel as if, as I've gotten older, I've become more civilized, whereas to the end, you were a half-feral farm cat, always doing things your own way, going about the world and changing it to meet your needs instead of changing for the world. Though your physical body has become one again with the earth, buried in Grandma's backyard, one with the world and the land from whence you came, your memory will never fade from mine own, and I will treasure our shared existence, the overlap of time that we were granted in this lifetime, the hours we have spent in the same room, the times you would bite my wrist, because I try and brush out the knots you got in your armpit fur. I'll treasure Bite Catch, where I threw a toy mouse at you, and you'd bat it away with your paw, and make me fetch the mouse from across the room, always doing your bidding instead of the other way around. I'll treasure the way that you'd sit on my sewing projects or 3-ring binders or any other project I was working on, because you always wanted to know what was going on. I'll treasure the memories we made together, and I'll miss you till the day I die. I'll see you someday, Junie Megan. Your human sister, Morgan.